Good morning, friends, and welcome to Prairie Acres Farm. Today we have so much going on, and I am going to bring you along for that journey. Today we are going to be making 3 different types of cheeses. We are going to be making pepper jack, Gouda, and Gruyere. In addition to that, I'm also going to be making clotted cream. Now, if you don't know what clotted cream is, basically baked butter. So it's a very old English recipe, and I've never tried it, so I'm excited to try this. I've just been waiting for the opportunity where I have a lot of cream that I don't need for making butter. So in addition to the clotted cream, I am going to be making butter. The butter I'm going to be making off camera because you have seen me make butter before. Now, for the clotted cream, you're going to need at least 1.5 inches of heavy cream in your Dutch oven or in a oblong pan, whatever container you use that is oven safe. Now, for the clotted cream, if you are using store-bought cream, the heavy whipping cream, you are going to need 1/4 teaspoon diluted in 1/4 cup of non-chlorinated water. And this here's the calcium chloride. So you will need to add that to your store-bought cream because it's been pasteurized. Now, with that being said, you do not want the ultra pasteurized. It will not work. You have to use either regular pasteurized or raw cream that you get from a cow. Now, I am very, very fortunate in that I have 2 milking jerseys now, and I'll show a picture of Ruth here. She is our new milking cow that we got in Livingston, Texas. And she is a beautiful Jersey. She is a registered Jersey and potentially pregnant. So we are so super excited about that. Now, with the cheeses that we are going to be making, like I said, we're going to be making pepper jack. So let me bring you around. So in this pot here, I have got a lot of milk, and you can see that cream on top. And this here is 10 gallons of milk. And then in this pot here, this here is also a 10-gallon, and I did not fill it all the way up like I did last time I made cheese. So we're looking at approximately 9.5 gallons of, and then in the smaller pot here, currently I have got 3 gallons of milk, and I am going to be putting in 1 more gallon. So I have a total of 4 gallons of milk. So in order to get started on the clotted cream, because this is going to take 12 hours, you're going to want to heat your oven to 175 degrees, and I've already got mine set up. So all I'm going to do, first, let me bring you over. So when you are making clotted cream, you are going to want that nice heavy whipping cream, especially if you're using the raw milk. And this here is what you're looking for. You're looking for that nice, very thick cream on top, because that is what's going to make the clotted cream. So let me put my hood back on. This here is an oven safe Dutch oven, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it in the oven, and it is going to do its thing over 12 hours. So it is now 9:40 in the morning, and I'm not going to set my timer because I know it's going to take 12 hours. So I know at 9:30 tonight I can take it out. But I use my timer a lot for when I'm making cheese. So that's why I don't want to set that timer. So for the first cheese that we're going to be making, which is the pepper jack, this here is what you're going to need. You're going to need 2 cups of boiling water. And in that boiling water, I have 2 tablespoons of red pepper flakes. And this here is just a great value. This is what I have on hand. It isn't anything special. But so you take 2 tablespoons of your red pepper flakes, and you put it into the boiling water, and you let it sit for approximately 30 minutes because you want all of that flavor to disperse into your boiling water. So that is phase 1. That is what you have to do before you do anything else. Then for the pepper jack, you are going to need 2 gallons of milk, whether it be the milk you get from the store or whether you use raw milk. you're going to need 2 gallons of milk. You are also going to need a half teaspoon of MA4001. And this here is what I'm using. Now, this here is 4002, but it will still do the same thing. So if you have a 4001 or a 4002, both of them will work. And I get these off of cheesemaking.com. If you are using store-bought milk, you are going to have to use your calcium chloride. And that you will mix a half a teaspoon in a quarter cup of non-chlorinated water. In addition to your culture, you are going to need a half teaspoon of rennet diluted in a quarter cup of cool non-chlorinated water. So for every 2 gallons of milk that you are using, you're going to need about 2 tablespoons of additional red pepper flakes and 2 tablespoons of cheese salt. Now, the salt that you can use regular cheese salt. You can use kosher salt. You can use a pink Himalayan salt, or you can use a sea salt, fine grain or medium grain. You don't want to use the really large grain because, you don't want to use that. So anyways, that is what you need for your pepper jack. Now, you want to bring your pepper jack cheese up to an 86 degrees over 15 to 30 minutes. Now, my milk has been setting out since before I went to bed last night. And so it's not going to take much for my milk to warm up. And you are going to want to use a low heat. Now, I have a gas stove, and so it isn't going to take that long with a gas stove to heat that milk up to 86 degrees. If you are using an electric stove, just keep an eye on it. Make sure you're checking the temperature regularly, either through one of those stick-in thermometers or a thermal thermometer. So that is for the pepper jack. For the Gruyere, you are going to need 2 gallons of milk, a half teaspoon of Thermo C, and this here is what it is. Thermophilic type C, that is what you want. And you are going to need a half teaspoon of rennet diluted in a quarter cup of non-chlorinated water. For the Gruyere, you're going to bring your milk up to 90 degrees. Last but not least is your Gouda. Now for the Gouda, you are going to want to bring your temperature up to 86 degrees. And this is based on a 2-gallon recipe. So for every 2 gallons of milk, you are going to need 1/4 teaspoon of Mazo 2. And this here's what it looks like, Mazo 2. And you are going to need a half teaspoon of rennet diluted in a quarter cup of non-chlorinated water. Now, I do need to back up a little bit. So for the pepper jack cheese, if you don't have MA4001 or MA4002, you can also use MM100, or you can use Flora Danica. This here is another type of culture that you can use. Or, and this is what a lot of people won't tell you, you can use your 4001, 4002, or your MM100, and also a little bit of the Flora Danica. And what this is going to do is it's going to give your cheese a much more aromatic flavor, especially when you're using the red pepper flakes. You want to be able to balance out your flavors very well. And so today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix my MA4002 with a little bit of Flora Danica. And I'll bring you along for that. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to turn on our stove and bring our milk up to temperature. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do, let me bring you over. So for this pot here, this here's my Gruyere. I am going to pour in the last gallon. So our cows gave us more milk this morning and I needed another gallon. So I'm just going to pop that in there. So if you've noticed, on each of my pots, I've got a little tag on there. So this here's my Gouda. I'm going to bring that up to 86. Gruyere 90, and my jack to 86. I put those tags on there just to help me keep track of what I'm doing, and so I don't get my cheeses mixed up. I've done that before. So the next step that we're going to do is we're going to strain our red pepper flakes. I'm just going to get another measuring cup, Do not throw your red pepper flakes away. You're going to need them. So here is our red pepper solution. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in my milk. So with that, so now that I have the red pepper solution in here, I'm just going to give it a nice stir. And I'm going to mix up that cream. And what this is going to do is just going to add that nice peppery flavor to the pepper jack cheese. Now, I have two major markets coming up, and I will be at the Lumberton Farmers Market and Vendors Fair in Lumberton, Texas on October 25th. And then I will also be there December 13th. Now, these are two of the most major markets that I have coming up. So, I want to make sure that I am very prepared for these markets with cheese. And I've had a lot of requests for the pepper jack cheese. So that's why I'm making pepper jack. And then I've also had a request for the Gruyere and the Gouda, which is why I'm making those. And not only that, I'm out. So when these temperatures are set or blown up for each of the cheeses, I will bring you back and we'll add our cultures. All right, we'll see you in a minute. All right, friends. So our milk has come up to temperature in all three pots. And so now I'm going to be adding the cultures. So I'm going to add the jack cultures first. And for this, I am going to need 1/2 teaspoon of the MA4001. But like I said, I'm using 4002. I'm just use the same amount. And this is based on 2 gallons. And I've got 10 gallons in here. So I am going to need basically 2.5 teaspoons or 5 1/2 teaspoons. And all you're going to do is just sprinkle it on top. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you in and hopefully you can see what I'm doing. So I've already put in 1/2 teaspoon. This is 2. 3, 4, and 5. Now, in addition, just because on me, and I like to experiment, I'm going to put in a little bit of the Floridanica. And if you can see, it's a little bit bigger granules, but you just treat it the same. Just put it in. I'm just going to use 2/2 teaspoons. There's that. Now for the Gruyere, which is right here, I am going to need 1/2 teaspoon for every 2 gallons. So I've got 4 gallons in this one. So I'm just going to put it in 2. You just sprinkle it on top. And you're going to want to let this sit between 3 and 5 minutes to rehydrate because these are freeze-dried cultures. And then in the Gouda, you are going to want, for every 2 gallons, 1/4 teaspoon of the Mazo 2, which is right here. And I've got 9.5 gallons in there, so I'm going to need 4 in a little bit. So I've got my 1/4 teaspoon, and I really hope you guys can see this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and a little bit. All right, so that is it for the cultures. Now I'm going to let them rehydrate just for a few minutes. And so basically what I do once it's sitting in to rehydrate, I put my cultures back in the freezer. It just really helps with the longevity of the cultures. All right, so the jack has been sitting the longest, so I'm going to stir this up first. Let's get you in there. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my slotted spoon, going to go in and stir it in a circular motion. Now, this cheese pot that I'm using, This here is a 10-gallon Amish canner. But I tell you what, I love this pot for making cheese because I can get in there with my cubed cheese cutter and cut those curds up really beautifully. And I don't have to worry about the circular pots and stuff like that. So it's just a really awesome pot to have. And it wasn't all that expensive. I got it off of Amazon and I believe it was like right around $100. And according to the directions, if you're going to use it for canning, you can get 2 levels of quart jars, too high. And it comes with a shelf for it as well. But when I saw it, I thought, oh my goodness, that would make an awesome cheese pot. And it does. But when I'm heating up my milk, it takes both burners being on very low to warm it up. Alrighty. So there is that. And then the next one is going to be the Gruyere. So I'm just going to take it in that circular motion, going all the way down to the bottom because you want to incorporate those cultures. And you only need to do this for about 30 seconds. Now for the Gruyere and the Gouda, you are going to let these cultures ripen for 40 minutes. With the jack, you're going to let it ripen for 60 minutes. There's that. And this is all you do. You just, in a circular motion, top to bottom or bottom to top, and you move those pieces around to distribute them throughout your milk. And then you put your lids back on. There's that one and this one, and then my long one. So that's really about it for the moment. So let me put my timer on. So I'm going to set it for 40 minutes. And I know that with the Gruyere and the Gouda, I only need 40 minutes for the ripening process. But for the jack, I'm going to need 60 minutes. And that's not a big deal. So I'm going to bring you over and show you the butter. Whoops, let me get that out of the way. So this here, hopefully you can see all of this beautiful butter that I got today. Right now it's draining. I am going to be washing this, and all you do to wash butter is you just put cold water over it. And this year is a perfect time of year for me because the pipes in my attic are very cold, so I don't have to worry about my water being hot and melting my butter. So I will get that washed and then molded into the butter mold, and then it will go into the fridge and firm up. Now, as you can see, I still have a lot of bottles to wash, but that is what we have today or at the moment. So all of this butter was from 48 cups of cream. So I'm gauging by what I'm seeing here, probably about 7 pounds of butter, maybe a little bit more. But I'll bring you in when I get it all done and I'll show you how much butter I got out of 48 cups of cream. And that's not including what I kept in the milk because I did skim the milk, but I didn't take every single ounce of the cream. I left a nice cream content on top because I personally like it. I think it makes a much creamier cheese when you have a higher cream count. All right, so that is about it for right now. I will bring you back in about 40 minutes and we will put in the rennet and I'll show you how to do that. All right, we'll see you in a bit. Well, welcome back. So all of our milk has been ripening for the last 60 minutes. So I got caught up in making butter. So my other 2 pots of Gouda and the Gruyere, they went a little bit over, but it's really not going to make that big of a difference. So now we're going to be adding our rennet. So the first pot that we are going to do is the pepper jack. And so I've got some cool water right here. It's filtered, and so I'm just going to put some in this measuring cup. And then according to the directions, it is 1/2 teaspoon of rennet for every 2 gallons. So I have got a 1/2 teaspoon, and so we're going to need 5 of those in. So I'm just going to measure it out. All right, so that is 5 1/2 teaspoons. And I'm just stirring it in, and I am going to add it to my milk. Let's bring you up a little bit so you can see. So this here is all I'm going to do. I'm going to pour it in. And then I'm going to take my ladle. I'm just going to Look at all that cream on top. Do you see that? This is going to be a beautiful cheese. So just like what we did with the filters, we're just going to go to a circular motion, just about 30 seconds, no more than that. So when I get to cutting the curds, I am going to have to be up on a stool because this is a lot of milk to deal with, and it's just kind of hard on my body when I'm not up a little bit higher. All right, so there is that. And put the lid back on. Now we're going to set our timer for 60 minutes, or yes, 60 minutes. And so that will be ready in 60. So for the next one, we are going to do the Gruyere. And again, it is 1/2 teaspoon of rennet. And we only have 4 gallons, so we only need 1 teaspoon total. Okay. Do that on top of there. For the Gruyere, I'm going to double check the temperature. And it's gone down a little bit in temperature, but it should be okay. And then the last pot is going to be the Gouda. And again, we are going to need 1/2 teaspoon of rennet. So we've got approximately 9.5 gallons in here. So just a little over 2 teaspoons total. I don't know if you guys can hear it in the background, but I've got the last load of milk containers in the dishwasher getting cleaned and sanitized. So with this bigger pot, so you get down to the bottom, bring that milk up to the top. While you go in around the circular motion, you need to move that milk and incorporate that rennet. And there you have it. All right, so all of our rennet is added now, and we're going to wait 45 minutes for the smaller pots and 60 minutes for the pepper jack. And then we'll test it and see if it gives us a clean break. If it doesn't give us a clean break, we'll wait a couple more minutes and just test it. But based on how much I've made in the past, I know that it only takes about 45 minutes for that rennet to work and for your milk to coagulate. So we will see you back in about 40-50 minutes, and I will show you the next steps. All right. See you in a minute. All right, friends. So our cheeses have been ripening with the rennet for 40 minutes. So I'm going to do a curd test. Oh, that is so beautiful. Do you see how that is a beautiful clean break? That is what you are looking for. So there is that. And let's do the next one. Oh, that one is also very beautiful. So let's cover this up real quick. And we'll do the last one. And this is the pepper jack. See how this cuts? I can already tell it's going to be beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. All right. So now what we're going to do is we are going to cut our curds because they are all ready. Now for the pepper jack, once you cut it, you're going to let it set. Well, after all of these are cut, you're going to let them set for 5 minutes and let those curds heal. And then I will tell you what else we're going to do. So I've got my handy dandy curd cutter. I love this. And again, you can get that off of Amazon. This just makes cutting these curds so much easier. And I'm reaching the bottom. All right. So that's that one. So I am going to let that rest for 5 minutes. And while that's resting, I am going to cut the next ones. And I will bring you back. All right, so the curds have all been cut, but before I move on with the cheese, I want to show you what that looks like. Let me get my heat pad. This here is the clotted cream so far. So it still has a long ways to go, but it is getting there. So what we need to do now, if you notice on my pots, I've got my tags updated. So we're going to bring the Gouda and the pepper jack up to different temperatures. So the Gouda needs to come up to 98 degrees, and this here is what it looks like. And the pepper jack needs to come up to 101. As you can see, there's all kinds of gray on there already, and that is fine. So over the next 40 minutes, You're going to need to bring these temperatures up to 98 and 101 respectively. So that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn this burner on, and you want it very low. You don't want to scorch your curd, so that's why you kind of need to do that very low. Now, with the Gouda, this here is a different beast altogether. Right now, I have got my water warming up, and we want it at 140 degrees. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to get my spurtle and I'm going to stir it for 5 minutes. So let's get our timer going. We're going to stir it for 5 minutes. Going to let it rest for 5 minutes. And then we're going to take out some of this whey and we're going to add in the preheated water. Now just be very gentle. You don't want to shatter your curds. So you just want to be very gentle. Just come up from the bottom. And I kind of take my spurtle and I break it up a little bit. You can do this with your hands if your hands are really nice and clean. But because my spurtle can reach down in there, I'm going to choose to do that. And I'm just very gently breaking those curds up because you don't want them to mat together at this moment. And you guys missed it. Boy, did I make a mess. I was cutting this pot and my cutter kind of flew out and curds went everywhere. But there's a couple big ones right there. And so I'm just taking the edge of my spurtle and I'm breaking that up. Or you can just take your hands and very gently cut it like that. And my hands are very clean. And there you go. And that's all you have to do. So you want to be very gentle. Like I said, you want to be very gentle with your curds. And so that's why I'm just very gently breaking them up because you don't want them matted at this moment. There was a big piece. I'm just breaking that up. Oh, there's another big piece. So when you're cutting your curds and you're in a round pot, sometimes it's really hard to get the very bottom into a nice symmetrical cube. And so you just do the best you can. And that's why you kind of rely on your fingers at this point, just to break that up. And you're being very gentle. Oh, there's some big pieces right there. Oh, there's our timer. So now we're going to let this rest for 5 minutes. And while that is resting, I am going to give these other pots a stir. But I got to get on my stool because I'm short and I will bring you guys up. And there we go. So just very gently stir your curds, just like we did with the Gruyere. So this one here is the Gouda. And again, there's some big chunks because this is a deep pot with almost 10 gallons of milk in there, probably 9.5. Just breaking those up because you don't want your curds to mat at this juncture. Just want to break them up. And because that curd cutter cut it so nice, it's doing really well. And so when I cut this, it took me about, 3 or 4 minutes, but I had to go in different directions and from top to bottom because there's just so much in here. And when you come across those big pieces, you just break them up. And like I said, my hands are very clean. They've been washed with soap and water. And you can use a 50-50 vinegar solution to sanitize your hands. But I figure if I wash them really well, it's going to have the same effect. So, and that's what I do. All right, there's that one. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my temperature and see what my temperature is. It is at 90 degrees at this moment. So we just have to bring this one up to 8 more degrees. And I'm going to do the same procedure with the pepper jack. So just break up your curds. I am really excited about this. I've not made the pepper jack before. Now I've made just jack, and really it's the same process. All I'm doing is adding the pepper flakes to it. So I've made this type of cheese before, just not the pepper jack version of it. Whoa, there's a big piece. So I'm just going to break that up. So whenever you come across those big, large pieces, just very gently break them up. Nothing like playing with your food, huh? But this is looking really beautiful. And I really like using the spurtle because it really helps get underneath. Because right where the burners are, that is where the majority of your heat is going to be coming up. So you want to make sure that your curds don't stick to those hot spots. And so what happens when your curds get into that hot spot is that it'll clump up like this. And so all you do is in the way, you just break it up. All right. That should do it. Now, before I put the lid on, I want to check my temperature, and it is at 91 right now. So we've got a ways to go on that. That needs to come up to 101. So what you're going to want to do at this point is just stir these every few minutes and make sure that your curds are not sticking to the bottom, especially underneath those hot spots. And what I'm going to do is draw my hands off real quick. And so for the Gruyere, I'm going to take your lid off, and you're going to take out. So usually it's about 2 cups per gallon. So I'm going to take off at about 6 cups or 1.5 quarts of whey. And so what I do is when I have the measuring cup and I'm dipping out the whey, I'll pour it into a butter muslin lined colander. That way, if I accidentally get any curds in there, it doesn't go down the sink. So what I'm going to do right now is, or replace the whey with the water with how much I took out. There's that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to refill my, and while that's filling, I'm going to want to stir this a little bit. Okay. Sorry, y'all. I'm going to have to change. I'm going to have to rethink this because I got my directions mixed up. So it's the Gouda that I needed to add the water to, not the Gruyere. That's what happens when you're doing 3 cheeses at the same time. You get mixed up on your directions. So I am going to turn this one off, bring this one on to very low, smack that lid back on. So all is not lost. You can recover. So with the Gruyere, I want to bring the Gruyere up to 122 degrees. And with the Gouda, I want to take the whey off and replace it with the water. So I apologize, but like I said, that happens when you're making 3 cheeses at the same time. Let's bring you up a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. So all I'm doing is I'm going to ladle out some of this whey. So that's 4 cups, 6. So we want to take about 2 quarts, 2.5 quarts of whey off of the curds. And we are going to replace it with the 140-degree water. All right, that was 2 quarts right here. No, 4 quarts. You're just fine. All right, so I'm going to replace the water and I'm going to bring it up. As you can see, my temperature is right there. I'm going to bring up the curds to 98 degrees very slowly over the next 15-20 minutes by adding water, hot water to the curds. And then in the interim, I'm going to stir these because these still have to come up to 122. So I'm glad I realized my mistake early on. That's the one nice thing about cheese is that it is very forgiving, but I still want to try and keep it as close to the recipe as I possibly can. So now I'm going to add my hot water and I'm going to fill it up again. I'm going to stir it. When you're adding water to your curd like this, it is called washing the curd because you're diluting that whey that is in there. And once I get it all mixed up, I'm going to take the temperature again and make sure we're within the ballpark of 98 degrees. And I've got more water heating in case I need it. I'm just breaking up those curds. Last time I did this, I was doing exactly this. I had 3 cheeses going at the same time, and I had this back burner on, and I had burned my arm. You can still see a little bit of the scar there. I had like this, and I burned my arm. So please be careful. So I'm just breaking up the curds. So there was a hot spot down there. And this pot, even though I really like it, it comes in handy. It does get really hot on the bottom. So you need to be aware of what your pots do. Just breaking up these big curd masses because those curd masses, they create a lot of heat. So you want to make sure that you break those up. And at the same time, what it's doing is it's shrinking your curds down to the size that it should be. All right. That looks really good. I'm going to take a temperature and it's a little warm. So I don't need any more hot water on that. All right. So the directions for this is to stir for 10 minutes. And we got the 10 minutes already. The next stage that we're going to do is once we stir for the whole 10 minutes, is we're going to let the curds sink down and then we're going to ladle off enough of the whey to expose the curds. So we did get a little bit warmer than what I thought we would at this juncture, but you know what? It's all right. It's not going to hurt the cheese at all. And with the lid being off and the constant stirring, it will cool it down fairly quickly. But this is real life, people. Sometimes things work out and sometimes they don't. And I'm just going to stir my Gruyere curds because we still have to be mindful that we've got 3 different cheeses going on. So I've got to make sure that I am addressing all of the different cheeses at the same time. And all I'm doing right now is I'm breaking up these curds. Hopefully you can see because we don't want the curds to mat just yet. And we want to bring this temperature up to 122. So it does get a little crazy when you're making 3 cheeses at the same time. Just be mindful of where your utensils are so you don't accidentally fling your curds out of the pot like I did earlier. This is looking good. All right, there's that. I'm going to cover that just for a second. And we're going to stir the pepper jack. Oh, by the way, I got just over 9 pounds of butter from the 48 cups of cream. So there's a really big curd mass right here. I'm not bringing it out of the whey, but I'm using the whey to help break it up because you don't want that. But that is what happens when your heat source is on 2 burners like this. And so I'm just breaking it up. And by the whey is excellent for skincare. So what I've done with the whey is I have made soap out of it because I realized when I was making cheese how soft my hands were after making the cheese and it dawned on me that it was the whey that really softened them up. So me not wanting to waste stuff, I went ahead and I took the whey and I made soap out of it. And oh my goodness, it came out so awesome. All right, this is looking good. All those big curd masses are broken up. So you can see how nice free flowing those curds are. Oh, there's one. There we go. Let's check our temperature. It's 98. We're almost there. Just a couple more degrees. All right, so with this one here, now we're going to take this and we're going to ladle off enough of the whey to expose the curds. All right, so I'm going to finish ladling off the curds and I will bring you back. All right, so I have the curds pretty much down, like the whey taken off. So what I did was I took this off of the back of the stove because it was killing my back is what I was doing from overextending my back. So now what you do is I'm just going to use my hand and you're just going to move those curds around for 10 minutes. Basically, you're going to stir the curds for 10 minutes. And I'm not going to keep you here for the whole 10 minutes. And then in the interim, while I'm doing this, I'm also going to stir all of my other curds and make sure that they're coming up to temperature and stuff like that. So once this here has been stirred for 10 minutes, then you're going to drain it into your lined colander and fill your molds. And I'll bring you along for that here in just a few minutes. I'm just going to give these a nice stir, break it up. So I'm using that whey to break up any kind of large curd masses with my hands. And you can see, I mean, it's a beautiful curd. This here is what you're looking for. And so I'm just breaking up any large pieces because at this point it likes to mat. And so you don't want it to mat just yet. This is also called milling the curd. So if you ever hear somebody say, yeah, I'm milling curd or whatever, all they're doing really is breaking it up. But we're going to be doing that with the pepper jack when we go to add the pepper flakes and the salt. All right. So I'm going to continue on with this for 8 more minutes and then I will bring you back. All right. So the curds have been stirred and they are looking fabulous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very carefully decant all of the curds into this lined colander. And I've got some butter muslin soaking in some whey because that really helps the cheese not to stick. And then we're going to fill up these little molds. And I'm basically going to color code it. So the blue is going to be the Gouda. And then the white ones like that is going to be the Gruyere. And then I've got other molds for the jack cheese. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to pour that in and just going to move it around just a little bit. So bring you in a little closer. So we want to get some of this whey off. So, but I'm going to use it to my advantage and break up my curd mass. That way I can fill my molds very well. So once you get this all done and you fill up your molds, you're going to put it in your cheese press and you're going to press it at, I believe it's 12 pounds, but let me double check that. And all I'm trying to do is release the whey from between the curds and to break it up all at the same time. Once this here has pressed, and I'll tell you all of that here in a second. Once this is pressed to the desired time, you're going to use a near saturated brine solution and soak your cheese in a saturated brine solution for 8 hours. I believe it's 8 hours. I'll double check on that one. But a near saturated brine solution is 1 gallon of water to 24 ounces of cheese salt. And again, you can use pink Himalayan, you can use kosher salt, you can use the sea salt or the cheese salt that I use. And so it's totally up to you. The other thing that you could do with cheeses like this is you could add spices to it, herbs, and I think that would be like really, really cool. But so far, everybody just kind of likes my plain Gouda. So here I got my mold. I'm going to take my butter muslin, wring it out. And these are clean and sanitized. I just didn't show that part because you guys know how to do that stuff. And then all I'm going to do is put my curds in the mold. And I kind of press it down as I'm putting it in. That way it gets all the way into the nooks and crannies. So what I'll do is once I get all of my molds filled, I'll put them in the cheese press. And then about an hour after the pressing, I'll take them out, I'll flip them, and then put them back in the press. And I'll do that a couple different times, or depending on how they look. If they're looking really well, like knitted very well, then I kind of is a judgment call. So there's that one. And then this here is a follower. So once you have your mold filled, you cover the top with your cheesecloth and you put your follower on. And then this here will go into the cheese press. And let me swing you around and I'll show you. All right, hopefully you guys can see that. But this here is my setup. And all I do is I just put it in there and I put my cloth in there. That way it doesn't leak all over my counter. And then once I get another mold on top, then I'll release this plunger and you put some weight on it and that is what it will be. So according to my book, you guys have seen me use this book a couple different times. This is my go-to book. And so it says here, line your mold, which we just did, blah, blah, blah. Press the curds into the mold with your hands as you go, which we did. Press at 10 pounds for 30 minutes. Remove the cheese from the mold. Unwrap, flip, and then 15 pounds for 6 to 8 hours. So probably before I go to bed, it'll come out of the mold. And then you put it in your near saturated brine. So I'm going to finish doing this. And then when I get this all set up, I'll bring you back. Thanks. All right, so we are back and we are at the press. This here is called a Dutch style press, and I can get two molds, one on top of each other. And what I did was I took a very small, thin cutting board and I put a little bit of cloth underneath it just to keep it from slipping. And so all you're going to do at this point is you're going to take out the little dowel that comes with it, and you're going to make sure that it's all lined up nice and good. Then you're going to lift this handle up and you're going to put the little dowel into the slot, and you're going to press at 8 pounds for 30 minutes or according to the directions. I normally let it sit for an hour because I will get a really good press out of that. Now, what I do have is I've got a 5-liter milk jug that I use, and I put a little bit of water in it, and I use that for my weight. Now, I've got water bags as well, but they're very cumbersome, and that's all there is to it. And then the liquid, as you can see, the liquid will come out the bottom here. And that's why I have the cookie sheet underneath it to catch all of that whey that comes out. And yeah, I'm going to fill up the rest of my molds with the Gouda, and then I'll work on the Gruyere, and then I will bring you back on camera for the next phase of the jack cheese. So we'll see you in a few minutes. Hi, and welcome back. So I have all of the cheeses ready to be flipped. Let me move my phone out of the way. And it's really not a difficult process. So trying to move my mop out of the way because I had such a mess in here. I had to get it clean. So the first one we're going to flip is the pepper jack. So let me turn you so that you can see what I'm doing. I normally don't show this part because it's pretty common sense, but just in case somebody wants to see. And so what I did here was I put, the name of the cheese on the press. So, the pepper jack is pretty easy to understand, but when you have got 2 or 3 cheeses that are the same color, you want to make sure that you have something to distinguish them, whether it's a different color mold or something. There we go. And then this one here, I just kind of pull up on the cheese, the butter muslin to try and release that. And then look how nice that looks. Oh my goodness. So flip it over. Let me get my tag out of the way. And then you just put it back in. And I kind of just make sure my butter muslin is nice and smooth on top like that. And then plop it back in. And I fold it back over and put my follower back on. And that's really all there is to it. So for this one here, same thing. But look how pretty that looks. This side doesn't look all that pretty, but when you flip it, all of that will get evened out. So I just put it in like so, and then cover it back up with the tail of your butter muslin. Whoa! I've got too much stuff on the counters. And I just wrap it up nice and pretty. I try and get the wrinkles out, and then I put it back in the press. So this here takes a little bit of maneuvering. Get on there. So on this here, oh my goodness, this is being such a pill. If I had a little bit more space, I could get that board underneath it, but I don't have even that much space. So I've got to just finagle it until I can get it on there. Perfect. And then I take my little dowel. As soon as I figure out what I did with it. There it is. And bummer. All right. I will address that. But so that is all you do. You just go around through your molds and you flip them. And then depending on how much whey comes out will determine how many more times that you're going to flip them. There's really not a whole lot of whey that's coming out at this moment. So I'll probably flip it one more time. And then the Gouda will come out at about 9-10 o'clock tonight. And then it will go into a saltwater bath. So I will bring you back at about 9:30 when I go to take the clotted cream out of the oven. So until then, I'll see you later. All right, so we are back. So I need to apologize because when I was reviewing the previous footage to make sure I caught everything, it was very apparent that something happened with my camera. Either when I was changing the battery or I pressed the wrong button, something happened. And all of the footage of me adding the red pepper flakes and the salt to the to the pepper jack cheese was gone. So I have no footage of that at all. And so for that, I deeply apologize. But right now, we are going to unmold or take the cheese out of the press and the molds, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. So let me move this over so that you can see. So I already took the weight off, and so now I'm just going to, let's see if I can. This gets stuck every once in a while because there was just a lot of weight on it. There it goes. I'm just going to put that back up there so I don't lose it. So this here is going to be the pepper jack cheese, and this here's one of the smaller molds or smaller rounds. But all you do is you just take it out of the cloth, the cheesecloth, and look at this. Isn't this pretty? That is very cool. So I'm going to set this aside and we'll take this one out. Hopefully you guys can see this. And if you're curious about what time it is, 9:25. So we've got a few more minutes and then the clotted cream will come out of the oven. But look at this. This is absolutely beautiful. So I can't wait to see what this tastes like once it's all done. So what we're going to do with the pepper jack is I'm going to rub salt on it all over, and then it's going to air dry on the counter on bamboo mats. But I'm going to cover it in salt and let it air dry on bamboo mats for 24 hours, and then it will get vacuum sealed. So there is that. And then, it looks like this one might have got a little bit wonky. Go Yeah, I got a little bit wonky, but it's all right. That's what happens once in a while when there's a lot of pressure. And I knew there was that potential. I was out of cheese presses. Actually, it doesn't look too bad. I mean, it's a little wonky, but it's not too bad. So, and then this here is the last pepper jack, but it's still a very, very nice piece of cheese. Now, this one here came out really wonky. And again, if I would have had enough cheese presses, this wouldn't have happened. And I could have probably saved some of the cheese making for another day. But in order to comply with Texas law, which states that my cheese has to age for 60 days, I had to get it done. There was just no way around that. And this here is the Gouda. So the next couple cheeses that I'm gonna take out will be the Gouda. So it's a little wonky on this side, but all in all, it's still a really nice piece of cheese. And that is Gouda. So the Gouda is going to go into the salt bath. So I'm going to move you around here a little bit. And so normally I use my drying box for the salt bath, but it is being occupied by a lot of Brie. Remember the Brie we made the other day? Well, that's where it's at. So this here is just my roaster. And I've got my near saturated brine solution already in there. So I'm just going to put it right in there. Here's that. And so the last two cheeses to get unmolded is going to be the two small wheels of Gouda. Look at how pretty that one came out. That came out really nice. Not too wonky. And this here is a little cutting board that I used in between. It's got a nice thin profile, but it allows it to sit without it adjusting too much like the other ones did. Let's move this up. And this is the last one. Very, very beautiful piece of cheese. I love the design, actually, that my molds give. So this here is the bottom. And so that's the pattern that is going to take on. But I just love it. I don't know why. I just do. I think it adds character. But that is the last of the Gouda. So I'm going to move you around because we got one more to unveil, and that is the Gruyere. So I ran out of cheese molds, not cheese molds, but cheese presses. So I did an impromptu press. So I know that these textbooks weigh about between 4 and 5 pounds each. And so I just got 2 of my old textbooks and I used it as a press. So if you don't have a cheese press, you can make do. You can use textbooks or you could use the barbell weights. I've used their weights that you put on a awning, on the legs of the awning. And I do have 8 of those, but I loaned them to my son and not thinking I would need them. Never say never, right? So, anyways, so my son is using those. And so I had to come up with an alternative for a weight. And so that is where the textbook came in. And this here is the Gruyere. Very beautiful. So it has taken on the pattern of the bamboo mat, and that doesn't bother me at all. It'll get cut into probably 8s, and it probably weighs about 4.5, 5 pounds. Actually, let's weigh that. Let me get my scale and we'll weigh it. All right, moment of truth. Okay, 3 pounds and 11 1/4 ounces, so almost just over 3.5 pounds. And so a typical yield for cheese, especially a semi hard cheese like this, is 1 pound of cheese per every gallon of milk. And so for the Gruyere, we used 4 gallons of milk. So, and we got almost 4 pounds of cheese. So I'm going to put this in a salt bath as well. And so these cheeses will sit in a salt bath overnight. So that I'm going to have to come up with an alternative for a salt bath for that. And I will do that off camera. No sense in boring y'all to that that one. And so this here is what I mix my salt brine in. And I just keep it in the fridge. And then I add salt to it as I need to. You can also add calcium chloride to your salt brine, but I've never really needed to. So right now, we've got our cheese in this salt bath. I would love to have more space, but it is what it is. So, moment of truth, we're going to take the clotted cream out of the oven. So, I'm going to bring you down a little bit. Oh, this looks amazing. So, I am going to bring you in so that you can see. So, this here's what the clotted cream looks like. So, I'm going to let this cool on this butcher block for about half hour or so. Then I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap and it will go into the fridge overnight. And then it will be ready to put into a container and enjoy. So what can you use clotted cream for? So clotted cream, at least in my opinion, it's kind of like a baked butter. It's made with all cream, heavy cream. And so it's like a baked butter. And you can put it on toast, you can put it on English muffins, crumpets, biscuits, scones, that sort of thing. So the English way to eat this when it's cooled down. So like I said, this here is going to cool on the counter for about an hour. I'll cover it in plastic wrap and then it will go into the fridge for 12 hours. So it takes 24 hours in total to make. Once you take the top off or the crust, if you will put the crust into a container and you can enjoy it like that. Now, the way the English eats it is up for debate. Some people will put their clotted cream on their toast or their crumpet, their scone, what have you, first, and then they'll top it with a jam or a preserve. Now, in other parts of England, such as Cornwall, they'll put the jam on the toast or the crumpet scone and then the clotted cream. So it just varies by region of how you enjoy clotted cream. I haven't decided how I'm going to try it first, but I still have a good 12, 13 hours before I can try it. But I will show you what it looks like tomorrow once it is cooled. And yeah, we'll just go along that journey together. So for tonight, I'm going to close out this video and I will see you tomorrow when we take the clotted cream out of the container and see what it looks like. All right, have a good night. Well, good morning, friends. Today is October the 21st, and yesterday we made all of that cheese. We made the clotted cream, we made the butter. So we had a lot going on yesterday. So I just wanted to bring you in and show you what it looks like this morning. So I have already taken the cheese out of the salt baths. So this here is the Gouda, these two here, and then this here is the Gruyere. So it came out beautiful. So these cheeses will drain on the mesh mat with a cloth underneath to catch any whey. And once it dries out, which will take about 6 to 8 hours, then I will vacuum seal it. And then over here is our pepper jack. And so this here was salted last night before I went to bed, and then I covered it with a cloth. And so tonight it will get vacuum sealed. Now, what I wanted to do this morning was bring you in. This here is some of the Brie that we made on October 8th. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it because it's due. But if you notice, it's starting to get that white rind, which is what we are looking for. So all I do to flip these, oh yeah, look at that. This is awesome. This is what we're looking for. Normally you would wrap these in cheesecloth or cheese paper, but I want to see a little bit more of that white bloomy rind. So this here is turning out beautiful. You can see on the side it's starting and on the back. So I'm going to give it about another week, and then I am going to wrap it in the cheesecloth. Oh, look at that. This is awesome. Oh, look at, see, this here is perfect. And this here is all you do is to flip your cheese. You just turn it over and let that bloomy rind develop. And that is all you do. So once I see a little bit more development on the rind with the white, then I'll wrap it in the cheesecloth. So let me move this out of the way. So this here is our clotted cream that we made yesterday. So I covered it before I went to bed last night. And this is what it looks like. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a spoon and I'm just going to put it in my dish, bring you down a little bit. So when you're taking the clotted cream out, you're going to have a layer of milk underneath. And I am not going to waste that. I am going to harvest that and make crumpets or biscuits or something out of it. But look at that. So that is what you're looking for. Now, from what I understand of the videos that I've seen, is most of the flavor is going to be in that crust. But that is looking gorgeous. So all I'm doing at this moment is just getting all of that really thick, buttery cream in the bottom. And there we go. So yesterday we had, like I said, we had a very busy day. And so I'm just going to show you everything that we made. So look at this. We made clotted cream, Old English clotted cream. We made 9 pounds of butter. We made 3 rounds of Gouda, 1 round of Gruyere, and we made all of this pepper jack cheese. Not bad for a day's work. I want to thank you so much for joining me. I know that this is going to be a long video, but we got so much done. So in upcoming videos, I'm going to be making some queso fresco. I'm going to be making some traditional mozzarella cheese. It's not the 30-minute kind or the 15-minute kind. This is traditional. So it takes all day to make. But it is so, so worth it. I am coming up with more cheese recipes that I'm going to be making for you in the future. So I hope you join me. I'm also going to be doing some baking projects and maybe some outside projects. So stay with me. Like, subscribe, share, all of that jazz. The algorithms really like those. And so, yeah, thank you. I so appreciate you coming along this journey with me. Have a blessed day, and I wish you the best. Thank you.